think on that note, we will jump into our talk for today. I am Dr. Sheila Segerson. I'm a veterinary behaviorist and I lead these calls. And today we are going to be hearing from Mick McAuliffe, who's going to be sharing part 2 of tips and tricks for incorporating behavior into the everyday. Welcome, Mick. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Sheila. Thanks, everyone. For those, I guess, yep, part 2. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts from part 1 that we could tap on before I get started? And if not, I'll jump straight into it if anything's been mulling over for the last couple of weeks. No?
I think we're good.
All right. And feel free to jump in too. If you want to make this more interactive, I have no problems at all. So today I'm going to cover, I guess, more of the people part and going more in depth into the adult learning part. For those that weren't with us last time, I've been around this for a very long time and did a lot of things I shouldn't have done. I've done a lot of good things that have worked out really, really well. So I'm just going to love to share. So I'm just turning on my timer so I don't go too far into this without giving time for everyone else. So I'm going to just share my experiences, some of the things that I found that didn't do after I tried them and weren't so successful, and some of the things I found were successful, and just go from there. So, and from the 2 parts, Sheila, the document I put together to do this, Sheila is going to make that available for everyone. And please feel free to contact me as well anytime. If you want to reach out and got a question or want to bounce in, I was talking to other people from other shows yesterday and we had a great day. So, yeah, all about helping each other and getting that information out. So the big thing I found that I was brought into animal shelters back in Australia many, many years ago. And, there was no enrichment. There was 2 veterinary behaviorists before me that had left due to the shelter world environment and the pushback and all the stuff they were trying to introduce. So my CEO said, don't care what happens, don't care how many staff you lose, just get it done. So I went in like a bulldozer, laying out all the rules, laying out all that needed to be done, and lost 50% of the staff in the shelter within 6 months. So what I highly recommend is don't bulldoze, don't go in. It was a bad way to do it. Very, very bad way to do it. And over the years, I guess I've become a much better individual and learning, and that's what all this is about, is teaching adults and learning things not to do. And I was a bit younger as well. And sometimes when we know a lot of information, we may disregard people's views, no matter where it comes from, whether it's from the heart or the head or wherever it may be. I've had some of my senior staff just disregard other staff's opinions, and we need not to do that. I know some of this is going to be pretty straight up for you guys, but it's nice just to have a reminder sometimes. And whether it be right, wrong, or indifferent, it's still their opinion. It comes from them. I had one person that worked for me, and she was never wrong. No matter what anyone did, said, including, and it ended up including me, that her programs, her way, her instructional technique was the best. Now, she was an absolutely wonderful trainer, could out-train me with an animal, without a doubt, I would say, but she could not train people. So therefore, her impact within the organization was great for only one animal. And we know that's not what is good for us. And unfortunately, through that as well, and through teaching adults for many, many years, is not everyone is there for the same reason as you. You guys are on this call because you're what I call the rock stars of the industry. you're self-starters, you're seeking out information, you're trying to do better. I'm volunteering for an organization at the moment, and I have people that I would know people would die for the position these peoples are in. It's working with exotics, and they're just, oh yeah, I don't want to work with that animal. I only want to do this animal. I want to do this later on in life, and I don't know whether my schedule works out for me. And it's a job, and they go through the motions, and it's hard to realize. Sorry, I forgot to turn my ringer off. It's hard sometimes just to realize that for some people it's just a job, and that's all they're going to do. So I work with those parameters, and I'm going to talk later on about dealing with some of those difficult people. But you, as for the ones that are leaders or co-workers, is accepting. It's hard to accept. It was very hard for me to accept sometimes, but when I did, man, it made my life easier, because then I focused on the people that really wanted to be there, and we'll talk about that soon. And we know we have our difficult animals, and we know we have our challenges, but there are ones that we can't find placement for, and that's one thing, I guess. I've been lucky enough through this industry. I have great mentors that taught me that very early on, that we can only do, and I think Sheila and I mentioned this in other calls, we can only do the best we can with what we've got at this time. I've been around this industry for over 30 years, in shelters for over 20. And man, I wish we had. I've got a rock star at the zoo at the moment. She's 23 years old, and she's one of those people that just has the insight. And it's like, oh my God, I wish I had you in my team, a 23-year-old and so hungry, and just absorbs it and can apply it. And you get those people, but there are some people that can't, aren't this way inclined, or their brain doesn't work this way, and we have to try and help them. At least I'm not a great accountant, guys. I never will be, or that's not my thing. And you'll find that staff, even though they love and work with the animals and want the greatest success, that's not their thing as deeply as it is yours. So don't close your door. When I started in one of the shelters I was with for a very long time, the existing behavior/trainer person had literally a closed door, and the staff were scared to talk to them. So staff, when they had an issue, would literally walk past and have to try and figure it out themselves. And then every time they did something, they'd get you. So don't close your door. I always had an open door policy. The only time I ever closed my door was when I was in a private meeting with someone, and that's it. Accessible. And so the things we do need to do, I found over the years that I never did for myself, especially early on, and this is a big one: be kind to yourself. There is so much that's put on your shoulders, so much that's asked of all of us, and it's okay. You can only do so much, like I said before, but be kind to yourself. Find ways, networks, other individuals to bounce things off. I know one of these people on this call, her and I were chatting yesterday. And not only is it good for you, but it's good for me. We get all that stuff out, come to some solutions, and keep going. The biggest thing I find is I don't stay in my office. I am not an office dweller. And you need to be, or your staff need to be on the floor with the staff as much as you possibly can, showing them how to do it regularly, not just once and done. An adult learning principle is you'll only remember 25% of what you were told within 48 hours. And that's in a calm learning environment. So imagine being in a barking kennels, told something, this is how you do it. You come back 48 hours later, and you're lucky if they remember 25%. We need to do it over and over and over again. Now, you say, I don't have time for that. This takes 5 minutes. I can do a shelter rounds with every staff member, show them how to do barkless kennels, for 3 days in a row. Took me 15 minutes out of my day, and I can have barkless kennels. Sorry, I'm talking my terms, but barkless kennels. Sheila, do you want to jump in, or everyone's cool with that term?
I think that we probably all have a general understanding of it, but I think it'd be helpful if you explain briefly how you teach it.
For sure. So every time we enter a kennel block, treats come fly. We call it, or we used to call it, pennies from above. The treats come out over the top of all the kennels and land on the floor. And people say, well, you're reinforcing the barking. What we found is the arousal comes from someone walking in the kennel. And what we're doing is changing that arousal response to when the kennel door opens, you look on the floor and there's treats. And in a very short time, you will have, and then you can walk along the kennels, reinforce more appropriate behaviors, better behaviors, and that can change very, very quickly. And you'll find the line staff initially, depending on your organization, will say, well, we don't have time to do that. And first day, it might take 5 minutes. Next day, it'll take 4 minutes. Next day, it takes 3 minutes. Within a couple of days, in a very short period, you'll walk into a kennel and all the dogs will go, oh, what's happening? And of course, then your whole shelter dynamic changes. You get a new dog in and the whole place blows up because you got this barky dog. Guess what? You do the same thing again and it's quiet again. Now, what we've got, and the medical staff do it, everybody does it. Like I was saying last time in the talk, that it's part of our equipment. Everyone wears treat pouches. There's always treats available. You know, we don't want to put up barriers that they can't do this stuff. And I was the one that would walk the kennels, and I'm the director showing them how to do this. If I've got time to do it, if I can do it, so can they. Okay? That's the way I look at it. Is, you know, when I joined an organization many years ago and the CEO was mopping the floor. And I thought, that's an organization I would work for. I never, ever asked my staff to do anything that I was not willing to do and step away from my work for the animal's well-being. So any questions on barkless kennels? It happens so quickly.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Get to know your people. Adults have different experiences, different backgrounds, and they learn, obviously, we're going to talk about that in different ways. But and including my volunteers, I always ask them, so what do you do for a living? What did you do before this? So then when I start talking with them, I can talk to them in using analogies and ideas, not talking about animals, but, oh, so you were customer service at Hy-Vee. How did you find that? And what was the difficult parts? And what did you like about it? And I can learn more about the person. I can get better ideas about their skill sets, which then in turn allows me to build a relationship and help teach them the way they like to learn. And you find out the way they receive information and get that through the way they do it. Not my style. My style is, I'm very tactile. I love data, I love facts, but then I've got to go do it. And if I can't prove somebody wrong, then I'll take it on. So, sorry, inside joke, but anyway, all right. And you'll find with your people out, I use the human analogy. So I can see someone on the screen a moment that has fear of rats. Ah, there they are. Okay. So, so when I talk about using thresholds and fear responses, and they go, oh, the cat shouldn't be scared or the dog shouldn't be scared, there's no reason. Well, the thing is, it's not irrational fear to that animal, and it's not irrational fear to that person to be scared of rats. I only found this out by yesterday, so thanks, sorry. I'll deal with that later, the backlash on that. So you put it in terms they understand. So how close could you be to a rat, or how close, sorry, they're going to log off in a minute because I'm stressing them out. No. How close could you be to a rat? What could I do? Could I give you $100 notes? And that's how I talk when I deal with people. I don't talk in, so this is the threshold, this is the sub-threshold, look at the physiological and biological responses. And I'll point out, look at the eyes and look at the body and look at the head turns and turn your head and soft body and calm. I'll talk about those things, but in things that they can really relate to so they can keep triggering it back in their mind. And you'll find there are hidden gems amongst those people when you start talking to them like that. They have no idea about animal behavior, but they have a great understanding of being scared of spiders or rats or whatever it may be. So that will help them then jump on board. Manage your resources. That was one thing that I had a lot of trouble early on in my career doing. I would just go down the point, I might as well do it myself. Well, on the last talk, we talked about surrounding yourself with people that make you look good. And one of my good people that taught me that is you can't do it all yourself. So learn to delegate. And could they do it the same way as you? No, but is it going to get done and the animals are looked after? Yeah. No harm, no foul. And how are they meant to learn if we don't entrust them with that? If we can't entrust them and we have to micromanage, then we may have a problem with that employee. And then that's a whole other talk on how to manage that and how to work with that. So, and unfortunately, there's research that shows that the average manager gets interrupted. They get 7 interruptions every hour. Then it takes you 25 minutes to fully regain cognitive focus. So one thing I do, one of my do's, I recommend you set time out. Two courses I did before I started, when I was started in animal sheltering, I did a frontline business management course. And one of the things that I was being downgraded on was my lack of ability to follow my schedule. And what I was doing is, well, how am I meant to follow my schedule when I just had a dog fight in the shelter and now I'm running down? The guy that was evaluating me in the workplace said, don't care. There's no one else that can deal with it. You're meant to be doing this, this, and this for the greater good. And I went, yeah, all right. So he was right. So what I've done is like each morning, I have time set out to run my reports so I know what I'm doing in my shelter that day, looking at all my, my behavior animals, what their length of stay is, who's on behavior mod, whatever it may be, needs behavior eval. And the other course I did was workplace trainer and assessor / evaluator. So I actually went away and learned how to be an adult trainer. And I had learned how to be a trainer through the military, which is a little bit different to training in the regular world. But actually some of the skill sets were really beneficial, including taking a 3-second pause to scan an audience once you ask a question. Simple thing like that, so you're not throwing out an answer. But the military didn't train me everything and these are the things that I remember, and it's whether you take it to heart or whether you take it to your advantage. When I got out of the military, I started training public training classes, and I had one lady in front of my whole class scream at me because she said, I paid you to teach me, not tell me. And I went, whoa. Because I was a teller, I knew what I was doing. This is how you do it. What, are you doing your homework? And she really put me back in my place. And thanks to her, and that was, oh God, over 25 years ago, I can still picture the dog. I can still picture her. I can still picture where we were training. That's how much an impact that had on me. And so I learned to be a better teacher, not just a trainer. I have also very strong believer in build a team around you and teach them at least some of what the other parts of your team know. My team that I had last, even though each staff member specialized in dog, cat, horse, whatever it may be, every team member had to work with each other. We all worked as a group. Once a week, we'd all go out and do horse training. Then next week, we'd all go as a team, including the horse trainer and everyone else, to do cat training. Then we'd do dog training. And then we do whatever it may be, whatever that exercise was. Because if one of, say me left the team, what happens then? Or the horse trainer is out, or your dog person is out. No, they're not the specialist, but they can help manage your program till you get someone else in or whatever it may be. So I found that to be, plus training other animals is hugely beneficial. You know, I was primarily training dogs. I went into the zoo world and I went, oh my God, this is so cool, and how much I really know. And still today, you know, I still wonder how I still love this because how little I know, for the fact of there's so many things we're learning now compared to what we used to know. All right. Any questions so far? I'm getting dry mouth here. All right. That's 3 seconds. We'll keep going. All right. I'm a big one on, we're talking about different learning styles. So have materials available for your staff. Have your organization invest in learning materials. I do not read novels or storybooks or anything like that, but I read textbooks and I read manuals and papers and some people go, what is wrong with you? That is the only thing I read. And I won't read it front cover to back cover. I'll pick parts that I want, unless it's a paper, and read something that's got my interest at that time. But and then people learn through video and through tactile, and give them the opportunity. I see Carly's the same, yeah. Thanks, Carly. I don't feel alone now. So, you know, adults learn different ways, so give them those resources. And I got my organization to invest in a library. And then we also had on our server videos and more links that the staff could go to at any time. And especially in our so-called slower times, we would set time aside for the staff to go and do some self-education. Same as fear-free, we would make the time available. We would take someone off the floor, go do your fear-free, print your certificate, and put it in your personal file. And if that meant me going and cleaning a kennel while they did it, I did it. If I wanted them to be fear-free certified, then I got off my butt and did it. Or make my supervisors go and clean their kennels for them, but whatever it may be. So have posters even around different languages, bilingual, whatever it may be, whatever you need for your people, have different stuff. Go past it every single day. When before the 5 domains, the 5 freedoms were in 4 to 5 foot letters down our hallway. Every day coming in and out of the shelter, you would pass them by. Stay educated. And of course, you guys are. One and follow best practices. That's one of the do's, of course. But continuing education, that's hard for some organizations to justify. I always did my own budgets. I always put education in for my staff and myself in the budget. If I didn't use it, I always made sure I used it, or because otherwise they'd take it away from me. But also then when it was something of great amount, I would actually do what's called a repayment agreement. So say you want to do a program that costs $4,000 and your shelter would cringe at you spending $4,000 on further education. What I actually did is said, okay, I'm going to do this and let's do a repayment agreement. If I leave within the first year, I owe you $3,500. These are just figures. People make them up differently. If I leave within 2 years, I owe you 50%. If I'm here for 3 years, I owe you, and leave after 3 years, I owe you nothing, or whatever the terms may be. And what that does, it allows the organization to invest, but know if something happens, they're going to get their return. You get benefit, they get a benefit from the knowledge, but also the funding and Sheila or anyone, do you want to comment on that or concerns, or because I've seen some different faces on that one?
I just want to comment on it, and that I think that's a brilliant idea. I know that so many organizations struggle with thinking about wanting to invest some significant training into a person, which is always good for that person, but the organization always has to be concerned about, well, what, are they going to leave right after they finish? And so I think that's a really interesting idea. Thanks for sharing that.
No worries. Euthanasias. We've got so much better at talking to us, or hopefully we have. The whys. Adults need to know the whys. Whether they agree with it or not, they need to understand the whys. I do not like being told anything without a why. I'd even go into my staff and go, okay, this is going to suck, but this is why. We're going to do A, B, and C. And they take a breath and go, yeah, it does suck, but now I know why. And we go and do it. So that I really appreciated from them, and I think it helped a lot for people to get at least understand whether they like it or not, they know why. All right. Teaching people. In the States, you guys see it as see one, do one, teach one. In my world, it's explain, demonstrate, and supervise. So I explain something to somebody, I demonstrate it to them, explain, demonstrate, and then I supervise them doing it. So I had to repeat it to myself to figure it out. So, we can be working up to a kennel, and there's just one kitten that's stuck in my head, and there's a little kitten in there, and it would blink, but avert eyes, avert head, and I noticed that it had a ball in there. So I started playing with the ball with the stick, and I was showing the staff member where the thresholds were, where the blinking, where the body shifts were. But I started playing with you don't have to always just directly interact with the cat, because they'd had problems and they asked me about this cat. So I started playing with the ball, and I actually built a relationship with this cat through the ball, not through me. When I started playing with the ball, they knew the cat played with the ball. So I did a long stick and just moved the ball around, and I ended up building a relationship through the ball with this cat. And then the staff member could see stuff, and then they started doing that. And this cat turned out lovely and got adopted and all the rest of it. But again, that 5 minutes walking through and say, tell me about this guy. When I see an animal, the first thing I do, and I said this in the first talk, is I go and talk to the caretakers. They're the one that spends the time with it every day, go in the enclosure with it every day, walk in, when I look at a bank of cats, I don't go in. If we were lucky enough to have glass on the outside of ours, I stand outside with the staff member and say, tell me what you see. And someone go, I don't know what you mean. I'm like, okay, let's talk this through. Let's look at this cat before we even go in. And then we stop again and look at the change of all the things we saw outside now closer up, and giving them that feedback. Then I'll drop back in a couple of days later and tell me what you saw. And you'll find doing that every couple of days, it just builds and builds. And you'll be walking down the walking down the hallway, and they come up and go, Mick, remember this cat? Well, I did this and it did blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, there you go. You got it. And I'd say to them, you don't need me. And they go, oh no, don't say that. But that's the feeling I want the staff to have. Empower them with the information. And like I said, you'll get some of those ones that go, okay, that's all right. 20% of your people take up 80% of your time. I give them very short information that can get them through, because they're the ones that you're struggling with and may not want to take on board what you're teaching them anyway. And I focus on that 80%. They're the ones I spend that other time with. Of course, I'm not going to disregard the other ones, because they could be gems that are just having a rough day. But I really make sure I put that time in. Like I said, get away from the kennels. Learning styles. We talked about that quickly. Tactile, visual, videos, manuals, whatever it may be. have those resources available. Find out how they learn things, what they like. Hobbies. If they have a hobby and you're going like, well, who cares? I actually care because it might be a skill set that I can use or use to my advantage. Train the trainers. If you can't train all your staff, train the supervisors. We all have high turnover, we all have turnover of staff. So pull those ones that have stayed in the shelter, are going to stay in the shelter, and teach them to be the teachers. No, they're not used, but they can get the fundamentals down without a doubt. We can have reward schemes. We'll talk about that if you like. Click tickets. I used to have click tickets for staff. So and staff members rewarded staff members. No, sorry, wrong. We tried that and we found they were clicking friends of friends and getting all these tickets to put in the bucket at the end of the month. So click tickets came from supervisors. So if you saw somebody doing a good job, they were clicking an animal at the right time, or they were not, just doing something good, being pleasant. It didn't have to be with an animal. And they'd click it, they'd gather all their click tickets at the end of the month, we'd put it in a bucket and do a draw. And it was like a $25 card to coffee house or whatever it may be. But they were reinforcing the staff. Now, word of warning. Check with your HR and your organization leaders whether this worked, because then I had some blowback from admin staff that said that they didn't have the same opportunities and it wasn't fair. So then we had buckets on our adoption kennels. So we made sure that everybody knew the understanding that they had the opportunity, and you can do it anytime, anywhere within this shelter. And you are not just limited to living in admin. You can go to the back of house, front of house, and treat animals. So there you go. So setting a few parameters at the start would really help. Okay, I talked about open door policy. And when someone comes to me with that, I always ask them, tell me what you see, not what you think. Because I don't want to know what you think. I always want to know what you saw. Because tell me what you think doesn't really mean anything to me. When we talk about the animal part, and I'm going to quickly go over this because it's in the document, we've got a couple of minutes left, is I'm always, if we have to euthanize, we do not make the animals their last day, their worst day. Many, many years ago, a veterinary friend of mine developed a euthanasia garden at the back of his veterinary practice. And it was, like an English garden where people would go out and he would let them spend time with their pet. And then when they were ready, they would hit a little buzzer and then he would come down and euthanize in the garden. And then when they were ready to leave, he would leave. And it just showed the compassion that he had for the animal and the people on the last day. I always let my staff, if it was okay and safe to do so, is go and buy burgers and other alternatives, or let the behavior staff do the youth. And whoever had the best relationship and were okay with doing it, that's who would be part of the euthanasia. And whatever other protocols you've got in place, of course, to make that not as stressful as it. But the EU garden blankets, but that EU garden, guys, that's where my dogs went. And it was really, really made it so much better for what we could do. Anyway, all right, I've talked about that. If people find things are working, have your own tricks and tips board. Put a whiteboard up. Found this works for someone. Blah, blah, loves this, or on their kennel, wherever it may be. It's the same as enrichment. People used to make enrichment plans for the whole shelter. I make enrichment plans for the individual. Don't know about you, but I just said before, I'm a manual or a text reader. Well, that's a book, but it's not, Harry Potter. It's still enriching, but someone else's enrichment might be Harry Potter. It ain't the same. We're all not the same. They're all not the same. Excuse me. I use the analogies which I talked about. How I teach about reinforcing appropriate behavior, I just make a 5-second rule. From when the animal, that's what we call it within our organization. Oh, what's the 5-second rule? When an animal does an inappropriate behavior, performs an appropriate behavior, you wait 5 seconds and reinforce it. Now, they probably won't wait 5 seconds. They might wait 3 seconds. But if you make it 3 seconds, they'll wait 1 second. So I always stretch it out and made it a little bit more, and you can refine that later. Just simple, just terms, little phrases that make it much, much easier. And I know I'm getting close, Sheila. At no times ever do I use punishment. When I started working in exotics, I actually worked consciously, because I was still training domestics as well privately, to take the no out of my vocabulary. I can't remember the last time I said no to an animal. Unfortunately, I still say it to people. But by the time I teach, by the time I say no, I could actually give a cue or a direction or something I want. Why waste your time with no's? And exotics don't care. Exotics, you go no to a couple of 100-pound seal, and it's like, yeah, I don't care. So I thought, why are we doing it with dogs and cats and everything else? So yeah, probably over 20 years I haven't said no. So I'm happy with that. Oh, nearly there. All right. So I don't use punishment. I come from a country where electric collars, pinch collars, and prong collars are illegal. So I have never used them, never will, and are not allowed where I work. For whatever your views are, I'm just giving, it'll be in the notes. This is what I do. So, I look at that is I've trained lots of difficult animals. It's just the way I do it. Be proactive, not reactive. That's my biggest thing, I got the mechanisms shirts with all the sayings on it, and that's a big one. Don't wait for something to happen. Be proactive. You get what you pay, people, not only with animals, but with your staff. So look for the good. We always seem to focus on the negatives. And the animal tells the story if you're willing to listen. And that's why I always use, tell me what you see. They learn to speak animal if they can talk. I remember one staff member that stormed into my office, hands on a hip. Well, I think this, and I went, okay, we can stop right there. I need you to go away, come back in 5 minutes with no hand on hip, and tell me what you saw. Okay, bye. Because I won't engage when they're in that emotional state either. Then she come back and said, okay, this is what I saw. Okay, cool. What do you think? And I don't tell her what to do. I said, what do you think we can do? And if they don't know, I coach them. And when you get through this, coaching the people, they start to process it themselves. Don't tell them. Like I said, don't tell, teach. Last thing, we talked about collaborating. It's one of the biggest things we can do. So thank you, everyone. I really appreciate this opportunity to get to talk to all you guys. And I do this at every workshop, everything I do. What is my number one desired behavior that I want to reinforce in an animal shelter? Anybody? Unmute, yell it out. For those that have worked with me, you don't have a shot. You're not allowed to say it. The number one behavior that we're going to reinforce any time we're working with any animal. If I take you to the zoo and you've got a big rhino in front of you, how do you want it to behave? Or what behavior do you want it to present? Come on, guys. You can do. Yes, Matt, well done. Calm is my number one desired behavior, because if you're not calm, you can't think. And if you can't think, you can't learn. There we go.